Welcome back to Bazooka Kickboxing and MMA. In today's episode, we're talking about round kick variations. A round kick is not just a round kick. Little subtle changes make a big difference. Think about defending a round kick. You're used to blocking your traditional round kick. Small variations can make a big difference when it comes to fighting. So today's episode, I'm going to give you 5 different round kick variations that can make a big difference when landing them.
Bazooka Joe Valtellini.
In today's episode, we're talking about 5 different round kick variations, and they all have subtle changes that make a big difference. For example, how much you pivot, how much do you get on the calf, how long is your stance. All of these things come into play when throwing your round kick. Let's get into the 5 round kicks, starting with the first one, which is your tie round kick, the kick that we learned as our classic traditional round kick. It's the one that's most technically sound. It's going to follow all the basic principles to get as much power as we can. So when doing this kick, it's all about the step, lengthening the stance to get the power. So I'm going to step by pushing off my rear calf. I'm stepping just outside of the line, opens my hip, gives me more power. As I step, I lengthen my stance, get outside of that center line, push off, and get good rotation and power. The biggest mistake people make when throwing their round kick is if I step in the opposite direction I'm kicking, I get all twisted and I lose the power in my hip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about an inch step out to help me open my kick and get the power. Now, when doing my power round kick, I want to make sure I get on the ball of my foot to get that power transfer going forward, and I want to make sure I pivot and come back to my stance. I'm looking at bringing my kick more round, so I'm looking at really pounding off, kicking the arms. So I'm building a nice circle. If I'm looking at a bird's eye view, you can see my kick coming as a circle. And back. So from this first kick is where the variations will happen. But in order to do these variations, you have to do the tie round kick perfectly, properly, and precisely. The second kick we're going to discuss is the 45 round kick, which is a nice variation to the round kick because it changes the angle of the kick. This kick is no longer round, and what you want to do is you want to kick on a 45. So our tie round kick is coming nice and round, chopping off the arms. The 45 kick now, you see, comes on an angle. So this kick works well when you want to get underneath the elbow. If my partner's or my opponent's hands are here, the 45 kick is perfect because I'm just getting underneath the elbow. If my opponent is fighting more of a boxing stance, arms in, this is when I'm going to use the round kick and kick off the arms. Structurally, when throwing that 45 round kick, there isn't much pivot. Because my kick is going on a 45 and the power isn't continuing through, I want to use that kick to come back into my stance. With the 45 kick, I can take a slight angle, but I'm keeping that angle in my foot. So when I throw the 45 kick, you see there is no pivot. I could either stay on the line or I can step slightly outside, but we're not pivoting, and a lot of the power of the kick comes from getting on that ball of the foot. So you see me use that calf. Because the kick is moving up, I need to get on that calf to get power. So key things I'm looking for in the 45 round kick is not throwing my shoulder too much. I don't need my shoulder being pivoted that much, giving me that rotation. So I'm going to have no pivot on my foot, but I am going to get on that ball of the foot so I can counterbalance my weight. The third kick is the snap kick, the chamber to the extension. So the power is coming from the extension in the knee. This kick is nice because you can place it more with control. The power kick, if your opponent moves, you get out of position. Where the snap kick, you're able to kick and get back to your stance quickly. So the benefit of this kick is precision, hitting and returning, as well as keeping a nice linear guard to defend punches. So the power, the impact isn't going through the target, it's meeting the target. So it's almost like slap in return. One of my favorite setups using the snap kick is the left kick to the body. All the time we see power round kicks, boom, all weighted, all powerful. But if you play with that precision, boom, you can really get your instep on that liver, and it's one of the most painful liver kicks you can give someone. If the bag or the pad is moving too much, it means you're kicking through the target. So watch how the bag moves when I throw a power round kick. Right? You get a lot of movement in the bag, right? But the variation of the snap kick, the bag shouldn't move because it's about impact. The fourth kick we're talking about is the question mark kick. So just like the name implies, it comes down on an angle. When you block anything, punches or kicks, your hands are in a vertical position. So the kick that comes down is very hard to block. Just like your hooks, just like downward elbows, they're one of the hardest strikes to block. And when you do this question mark kick, you can take it to the leg, but ideally you're gonna take it to the head and try to really come down on that neck. So the question mark kick is a nice variation because you can trick your opponent. I might throw some of the different variations before, especially the 45, get my opponent to think the kick's coming from an up angle. Now what I do is I adjust the kick and I kind of get that tail whip to come down on the kick. All right, it's a little bit harder on a bag. When I do this drill, I'd like to have someone hold a single pad so I can cut down on that kick. If you have trouble throwing high kicks, this one is going to be a little bit more difficult for you, but it's something you can work on, right? Through mobility training, flexibility, your traditional classic side splits, and repetition of the kick. All right, so on the bag, try to just come out and create the angle before and then cut down. A little bit more difficult, but you can get it. The fifth and final kick is the chopping kick, where you're gonna step right into that pivot, get all your weight, and the angle of the kick is coming down, and that's where you're gonna get most of that power. I use the chop down kick mostly to the leg once I know it is hurt. In a lot of my other videos, I talk about setup versus finish low kicks. It's that chopping, get off of center line, get into your pivot right away, and cut the angle of the kick. When I throw this chop down kick, you're gonna notice I hit with the higher part of my shin. This way I'm closer to my opponent, more weight behind it, which does more damage. All of the other kicks, we talked about stepping on center line or stepping slightly out, right? My round kick, my 45, the cut down, we're all more on a linear line. The chopping kick is gonna get my head off center line and bring my weight with me. This is a nice one when you attack the leg because I step right into the power. All my weight goes, it's the finisher. But you do need to be careful, I need to be honest, because if someone blocks that kick that you're going in that chopping kick, that's gonna be the most painful for your shin, and that's how you can break your shin. So you do need to use variations to set that one up. So when I throw my setup kick, I throw more of a snapping kick. I might throw more 45s because it's a little bit more precision. I'm keeping my good structure in my base as well in my hands. So when I do this one, I know it's ready. Once that leg's hurt, I'm gonna go. So from here, head off center line, I bring all my weight into the step, into the pivot. It's not a pivot. A pivot means I'm turning my foot to get power and then I'm returning. I'm stepping into it. And you can see my back foot comes off as I step. The weight of my body goes all forward and puts everything behind it. And when I'm landing this kick, I want nice high shin. You get more weight and more blunt force power behind it. Jump, jump, ouch, 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 ouch. Okay, ideally when you throw this kick, there needs to be a slight angle coming down. The weight, the gravity, the power, it just adds to the intensity of the kick. Ouch! That's up! 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 There you have it, 5 different variations to the round kick. A kick is not just a kick. You have to be able to make subtle changes according to your opponent. Each opponent might be different. Depending on their guard, depending on their types of counters, you have to make these subtle changes. Just the biggest difference of hitting someone's arm versus changing the angle to get under the elbow, that causes damage, makes you score points. So change your round kicks subtle and it's gonna have some big differences. And always remember, whatever strike it is, there is no right way and there is no wrong way. You have your traditional way like I talked about, but create different variations, trick your opponents, and it tends to be those variations that land and get you those knockouts that you're looking for.